Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today, it's part two of a conversation that we had with our project managers, Mike Tyler and Andrew Moody. And last week, we really talked about kind of the setup and the structure about what is a project manager? How do we classify a project? What are all the definitions and things? What does that mean? And in this episode, we're going to really get into some of the tactical things. How do we measure a successful project? How do we calculate the information? How do we actually start to structure what a project is going to look like? I feel like you're going to get a lot of tactical information and understand some of the back end behind the way that we go about our projects within our organization today. And that's going to be kind of the focus of the conversation. It's been a really informative conversation. So I want to jump into part two with Mike and Andrew right after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the project handoff meeting, because this has been something that you guys have been doing now for probably close to a year, if I remember correctly, because I know we were doing it before the expansion happened. So, time is really flying there. But I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like from a project management and an account management role. But I guess really before we do that, let's define what the difference for our organization, the difference between an account manager, which is sales, and project management, which is what you guys are doing. So what is the difference between those two roles?
The account management is dealing with the customers prior to any work getting done. Okay. They go to the customer, and the customer has that want that I was talking about earlier, but not really understanding what they need.
Sure.
So the account manager, it works very close with the customer and uses myself and Andrew and everyone else on the team as a reference of what the best solution is for the customer.
Yeah. Now,
one of the problems we had when we first started this project management role was I would get a text message. I would get a, "Hey, Mike, your parts are here for this job." And I would say, "What are you talking about? I never even heard of it."
You know, the one that we got to do today.
Yeah. And they want it done by Friday. It was like, wait a minute, time out. So what did the project handoff meeting accomplish for us? Was it gave us a little bit of time, rather than getting blindsided by these projects, to say, hey, these parts are going to be ordered.
Sure.
And it gives us a chance to say, you know what, maybe we need to order this one instead.
Yeah. And
talk about that. And what that's done is that has helped educate the team as to what the best solution is.
Sure.
So as we come up with the best solutions and we look at things together as a team in that project handoff meeting, the future is getting to be even better, because now across the board, we know what we're going to do with the team prior to the quote, prior to the customer wants and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting. When I have this conversation with people, this is one of the most difficult things that it makes sense in my head. Trying to get it out into words and try to describe it is the correlation between the account manager and project management and purchasing, and then actually execution of actually getting the parts on the project, right? The facility. And it's an interesting perspective, because it's a bit abnormal from other organizations. A lot of times what we refer to as an account manager role or the sales role is directly tied to the same person that actually will manage the project and make sure that it is implemented. They carry it all the way through. There is no handoff. They literally hold it the entire time. And our process is a little different, where there is a handoff from one department to the other. And so there's a lot of questions about, well, who decides what and who selects which parts, and how do you determine exactly how it's going to operate? And it's a very interesting perspective, because there's about, I guess there's 3 people on the account management role, 2 on your team from the project management, and then we have 2 people in purchasing, which Sam kind of leads that department. So you've got really 6 people as a whole, and then I guess Nathan helps with some of the scheduling on the service side. So you get 7 people that really carry that process all the way through. So there is there's a lot of information that does have to be handed off to other people. And just for context, for anybody that's listening or watching, those offices are all conjoined, right?
Yes.
So there's about 1,200 square foot space there that all of those offices are literally, you guys can roll chairs between spaces, and that's how the communication happens a little more rapidly than normal. So I just want to give context to that, because it's something that a lot of people ask about, because they're trying to figure out exactly how that flow happens. So a customer request comes in, one of the account managers works with them to figure out exactly what's going to happen. They may resource you guys from a field and installation experience to figure out exactly the product and solution, provide that to the customer, come back once they get approval, and then they say, here, we got approval of this. Now I'm going to hand it off to you, which brings us to that kind of handoff meeting.
Yeah. And I'll be completely honest and upfront about it.
Well, we hope that you'll be honest.
And most people know this. In the very beginning, when we started the project handoff meeting, I was not on board.
Yeah.
It was to me, I was, and I caught a lot of flack for it. But to me, it was another meeting. And I hadn't bought in, and I think it was more because I had this attitude that, my projects are going good, I have good communication, and I think it was kind of a false sense of communication, because I felt that way, but not everybody else was on the same. And at that point, we've picked up a lot since then. My projects have gotten larger. My projects have gotten more in quantity. Technicians have grown in quantity. So it's really changed, and I rely heavily on the project handoff meeting now. Even though I probably work with the account managers more than Mike does. I go to a lot of site visits with the account managers, more because sometimes I'm referred to as a control freak. I don't know where that comes from, but I like to know what's going on, and I like it. Not just I like to tag along if I don't have anything else going on, and I can go to these meetings, because it helps me from I can sit back and I can watch the account managers, and I can be there to support them, but it helps me sit down and think about, how can we improve this process? How can we make it more efficient? What new products can we use here? What product, because we get into a place where we're comfortable with how things are going. We're comfortable with this product set. We're comfortable with using the same electric strike, the same gate closer, the same camera everywhere, and we get there, and sometimes it's not always the best solution, but it's what we're comfortable with. So I like to go on these the trips to meet with the customers and see the customers what they need, and try to help meet their needs and improve our processes at the same time. That's I work hand in hand with account managers every single day, and Mike does too. But the handoff meeting, getting back to that, it's really become something that I rely on every Thursday, and it's helped me, because there has been plenty of times where a project rolls in and I'm like, what is this? Yeah. Where did it come from? And even though we may have talked about it a week or two before, I've already gotten enough other projects, and I'm like, what was this again? Yeah. And it's they can refresh my memory on it, if we're what we're waiting on, and it helps me out a lot, communicating between service management and purchasing management and all those guys, and getting ETAs on parts, and what technicians are going to be where, and making sure that's getting communicated.
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation.
It's interesting just kind of listening to you guys explain a lot of this from my perspective. Thinking in terms of a customer, it kind of changes a little bit of the perspective of there's a lot of visibility on my project, right? It's not just one person that I've got to tag or contact or follow around or whatever, try to get their attention to understand what's going on. There's a lot of eyeballs on a project, and so the likelihood that there's going to be a misstep on it, there's obviously still exists, but it's there's people watching it to make sure that does to do the best of your ability for it not to happen. And if it does, somebody there to communicate that is not tied to, I think one of the things that I've seen through the process and learned through the process is where a technician may be doing a fantastic job on a job site and a customer is wondering what's the status on my project. And so they're trying to contact that technician. Well, the technician is, maybe it's on a ladder working on something, or in a basement, or has their hands full with a lot of locks, and they can't answer that question, and then they just feel like they're in the dark. And having another person that is not directly on site working through that project that can give them the answers is really, to me, a major benefit for a customer. And it's what I'm hearing from you guys is really the comfort that there's more than just one set of eyeballs on something, and so that it's not going to get forgotten about.
Well, to your point, Chad, when we're dealing with a customer and it's a project where it's 4, 6 to 8 weeks out, manufacture it's a special product. That customer usually has 1 or 2 things that they're worried about.
Yeah.
Well, we've got 15 to 20. So when we hear, well, it's going to be 8 weeks, that's a special order stuff.
Sure.
It goes on the back burner.
Yeah.
So that project handoff meeting is usually brought to the attention, hey, this is going to be here in a week.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, now it's on the front burner.
Sure.
And that customer, when it's getting to be that 2 1 to 2 weeks, they're starting to think about it already, where that project handoff meeting is kind of a refresher for me and Andrew to say, hey, this is going to be here. So it really makes the customer happy, because in that time frame, we'll reach out to the customer, say, hey, we're expecting your parts. Are you still on schedule? That type of thing.
Yeah. It also, it kind of helps on accountability and from an efficiency standpoint, because if I get overloaded with projects and it's one of these long lead time projects, the account managers are still, they're still in the loop. They still, the customer sometimes will reach out to the account manager because, that was their first initial contact, and the account manager can hold us accountable to say, hey, this is going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. Will you please, reach out?
Yeah.
Because, we're not perfect as hard as we try to be.
Yeah.
There's times, and that's what's great about the team that we have here is we're not here to say, oh, well, that's Mike's problem now, I'm not worried about it. We're here to make everybody's life better. We're here to, give the customer the best support possible. And to do that requires, holding each other accountable and working together to make sure that we're all doing our job.
Well, and to kind of maybe jump off of that and kind of talking about the handoff meeting and how that works, how do we operate the difference between hand holding and handoff? And what does that mean to you guys?
I don't really, it's not really an issue that we've ever really had. We don't really have any hand holding a lot of times. It's, once we meet on Thursday, we've built trust within our team that, we're going to get the job done. Of course we do have times where the account managers will follow up with us and, ask the status and ask it, but it's more because they care about what we're doing and not because they're trying to hold our hand.
Well, let me kind of restate the question. Why is that important that we're not hand holding versus that we have the ability to hand off, and how does that work? Because I think that's not, from what I've had conversations with other people, that's not the norm.
Yeah.
Why is that different?
Because if somebody was holding my hand, I would get very agitated. And when somebody does, it's not happened not on purpose before, but it will create conflict because, we won't, mainly because, it's our prideful nature that, we want everybody to trust us that we're going to get it done. And if you're holding my hand or trying to hold my hand and bugging me about it, I'm going to feel like you don't trust me. And that's going to create issues, and that, that's something that we have to, we have to check in on and make sure we get it taken care of. So that's why I think it's very key to have, the trust built within the team that you can hand it off.
Sure. What do you think, Mike? So, because we've had hand holding in the past versus hand off now. What is
another word for hand holding?
Yeah.
is micromanaging in my eyes. So if you're micromanaging
Yeah.
everything, you're going to get bald and lose all your hair. So now that we're not doing that, it really works well to one of our core values is cultivating trust. You have to trust. And once you start to trust and you start building that trust with your teammates, there's no need to handhold.
Yeah.
Now, like Andrew was talking about, is keeping everybody accountable. That's different than holding their hand. It's just a reminder. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about you're not holding a hand? You're not micromanaging. And usually when that happens and people keep you accountable, they're doing that because they're there to help.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you might be overloaded. How can I help you? Our account managers are very, very good at that. They're constantly, what do you need? Can I help you? And a lot of times it really, really works well for that.
Yeah. Now,
there's been some time where I've reached out to our training manager to help me on some projects. And him and I have a little bit of conflict because I try to help him as much as he's helping me, and we ended up stepping on each other's toes. But it's so important that him and I have had multiple conversations and say, hey, back up.
Yeah.
I got this.
Sure.
You asked me to take care of it. So I say, all right, you got it. And I pull off on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just, we're not doing it because we don't trust each other. We're doing it to try to help each other.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think it's key, not just between us as a leadership team. When I hand off a project to my guys in the field, it's not just being handed. Once it gets handed off to me, it's my job to hand it off to the guys that are actually going to be doing the work, and not micromanaging that, which can be hard for me because I'm a stickler when it comes. And that was something that I struggled with more in the beginning when I first started this role, and I've gotten a lot better with. I'm still not perfect.
Yeah.
But, and it took, that's exactly what it was. It was building trust.
Yeah.
It was building trust that, my guys were going to meet my expectations, and I have high expectations because I want the customer to have, the best thing possible. So, one of the things that we've implemented is our core values. And as long as, we can hit all of our core values, whether it's, refined quality, cultivating trust, consistent communication, all of them, then I'm doing my job, my guys are doing their job, and that I'm not hand-holding. It's because of that trust that we've built. And I know what it feels like to be micromanaged, and in the field or in management or at home when your mom's nagging you about picking up your clothes when you're a teenager. That's nobody likes that.
My mother never had to do that.
I wasn't perfect like you, Mike. I'm sorry. That's one of the things that, I try not to do it to other people because I know, I wouldn't want it done to me. So,
see, one of the things that's very, very important with our team is because we don't micromanage them. I feel they have the ability to contact us if there's an issue. If there's something, they'll say, hey, let's call Mike because he's not micromanaging it.
Yeah.
He won't drive me nuts. He'll let me do my job. But if I need help, he's a great source for that.
Well, so going back to that kind of handoff meeting, it's interesting because I think that it handles kind of two bookends of our core values, which is the first one's defined expectations. So, and the account managers are saying this is what we've defined. These are the expectations that we've defined, and we're handing those off. And then the bookend of the end one is intentional execution. Define what winning looks like and don't give up until it's finished. Yeah. Prior planning prevents poor performance. Yep. And that is you sitting there going, hey, okay, we're handing these defined expectations off to you so that you can develop a plan for intentional execution. Yes. I just cut off my head there real quick. Intentional execution, and then carry that out. Yeah. And that's really where I see that to be. And if it's done correctly, then it really falls into those categories, and then it is a true handoff because you can carry out those expectations that have already been set.
Exactly. Yeah. But more importantly, with that being said, if them expectations are set and for some reason we won't be able to meet them, we know at that point.
Yeah.
so we can go back to the customer and say, hey, listen, I know we said this is going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it gives the customer more information about why it's not going to happen.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that happens from time to time. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yep.
But
Well, that falls into the core value of courageous honesty.
right. To say, I know that they said it's going to be done in 3 weeks, but the account managers are nuts. So it's going to be 4 weeks.
Is that kind, Mike? No, but it's very true. So having that handoff meeting, I think, is really a fundamental component of what makes a healthy project. All right, so I want to talk, kind of come back to what we were talking about before from an efficiency standpoint. How are we measuring that? How do you know, how do you know, one, that the project was efficient, but even more so, what do you categorize as a success, a successful project that you say, what, this one went off well, or this one didn't go off so well, based off of those defined expectations that were laid out?
So luckily here at Loc-Doc, we have a guy on our team that loves charts and graphs and numbers and PowerPoints and all sorts of stuff. He loves to collect data. I think his name's Chad or something.
Wow.
But no, so we've really been set up for success because there's a lot of different ways to measure, numbers.
Yeah.
And then, we set our own expectations between Mike and I. We all have an idea of what the perfect project is or what's going to make the project successful. My personal one is, as long as, I can go back and I can look at our numbers and we're efficient as far as how much time we've spent on site versus how much, time that we quoted for.
Yep.
If we're meeting that and that's lining up where it's supposed to, then, we did our jobs on that part.
Yep.
And, that's one of the things with TrackVia that we've been able to incorporate with, we've been able to log in our GPS information for each van, and then, log in the information that for the services that we have allowed, and be able to compare that and, see where we win, see where we lose. And then as long as the customer is satisfied at the very end, we've been given the, highest quality work possible. And as long as I can go back through and walk through at the end of a project and see that it meets my expectations, that's a win for me. If we took a month longer than we were supposed to and missed the deadline, and there was something that was sloppy or we had a warranty call, that's when it was unsuccessful. And I take that on me as the leader. I failed. I didn't set clear expectations for my team.
Sure.
And it happens. We're not, like I said, we're not always perfect, even though we strive to be. But I guess one of the biggest things, even a project can be a success, even if we had failures. If we have, a 4-week deadline and something happens, and, whether it's COVID or a part was delayed, or we ordered the incorrect part, or we found a better solution, for a different, part in the project.
Yep.
If we stop right then, communicate it to the customer, get that out ahead of time, there's a lot of times where that can turn into a win, because for one, we're showing that, we're honest. Yeah. We're communicating the best we can. And if we can head that off, the project can become a win in the end, because the customer, respects us, even though that, we were 2 weeks late on the deadline. They respect the fact that we were upfront instead of getting there to the end and saying, we're not going to be done today.
Sure.
So
having that, some hiccups can happen, but it still can be a successful project if
definitely.
There's that communication.
Yeah, we've had projects where stuff like that's happened, and, we were down on ourselves, of course, but we were honest. Yeah. And we let them know, and we've had customers come back to say, hey, that was great. Most people would have just, left us out to dry, and, we'll get to it or whatever. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I admire about everybody in our company, is that, we all, look at that as, we want Loc-Doc to look as good as possible, not because, we're egotistic or whatever, but we take pride in our logo, and we take pride in, the reputation that we have as a team. And, we take pride in the fact that our customers are happy at the end. And that's, the main thing we want to do is support them.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year.
And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. Mike, from your perspective, I know you guys just wrapped up a pretty large project ahead of schedule. So how were you measuring efficiencies on that to know if it was successful or not?
It was very interesting. When I first started as a project manager, I didn't have all that data and graphs and all that stuff that I look at with my eyes crossed and think, what do I need this for? But this last project was very, very, very important for that.
Yeah.
Because I used to say, well, how long do you think that's going to take, Mike? I used to say, 3 weeks. I had no idea. I would just pick a number out of the air. You know what I mean? But now I can actually look at past data.
That was recorded, right? Whatever you just said was recorded.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but now the new mic, the improved mic, can look at that data and say, okay, with estimated time is 135 hours.
Yep.
Okay. Now I got 3 guys going to do that project, 8 hours a day. I can break down how much time that's going to take. And what I did on this last project was I allowed some time for those hiccups.
Yep.
In doing that, a project that probably should have taken 8 to 9 weeks, we ended up getting done in 6.
Yeah.
Because everything was done efficiently. Everything was planned out prior to going there. And I brought the team that was going to that project in really early so they knew everything that I knew once that project started.
I want to come back to that in just a second, how to better organize your projects, because I think that's a key component. But it's interesting what you just said, and I want to circle back around it because I think it's very fundamentally, there's a lot of fundamentals with it. One is, and I'm not picking with you, but yes, so you just kind of pull a number out, like 3 weeks, 7 weeks. And the frustration with that across the board is, one, if you give a customer an expectation it's going to take 3 weeks and it ends up taking 6 weeks, then their expectation is 3, and they were hoping that it was going to be done in 2, but it ended up being 6 weeks. The other side, from a scheduling perspective for the entire organization, you know, you've said it's going to take 3 weeks, and so we're expecting it 3 weeks, and then it takes 6 weeks, and so we lose 3 other weeks from a team member's perspective to try to coordinate all that. So it's a target, and I've seen over the course of time that 3 weeks turn into, well, I said 3 weeks last time and it took 6 weeks, and I got kind of hounded from everybody because it took longer than expected. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it's going to take 6 weeks. And then we actually ended up in 4 weeks. So now we had 2 weeks of this empty time that we weren't planning for, which causes confusion there as well. So I think the reason I want to bring that up is the more accurate that you're able to predict that is so comforting for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's easier on me and Andrew as well if we can hit that target date.
Yeah.
Then where everything seems to flow a whole lot better.
Yeah.
You know, because we got so many things back to back that if we take longer on one project, the next customer is already delayed.
Yeah.
And to delay a project before you even start is not a good way to end it on time.
Got a bunch of overlapping projects. And I really think that it could be a whole nother podcast to talk about how we arrived at those numbers and how we arrived at those averages to get to that. And there's more than we can accomplish today. But very cool. Did you have anything to add on that from a scheduling perspective?
No, I mean, I think like Mike said, I mean, even when I started in project management a little over a year ago, it was different than it is now. I didn't have the visibility that I have now. And I have the ability now to, break down, almost exactly how many hours it's going to take me to pull, wire. We've done tests to see and pull averages on how long it takes to pull 100 foot of wire. And for me to be able to calculate that, and I'm a stats guy. I love stats. It probably has to do something with playing sports my entire life and watching sports. I love, looking at our numbers on, how efficient we were.
Yeah.
Because, I want to be as efficient as possible. So, if we pulled 1,000 foot of wire in 2 hours, that's awesome, because that's a lot better than what our average should be.
Yeah.
So being able to track that in TrackVia and seeing how many hours we've spent on site, it helps me from, a project management standpoint, as far as, seeing how many days I need to schedule a project for. And one of the things that I've started doing, for our large projects, not necessarily for like the projects that are going to take a day or so, but I create a pre-project handoff sheet for my guys. I put, the project number, the customer name, and then, the start date. And then I set a goal for our team of an end date. Because, I'm a firm believer, if you set a goal and something to look forward to, you're a lot higher, you're a lot more likely to hit that goal than you are if you just say, oh, we'll finish in, 3 weeks. But if I say, we're going to start July 1st and I want to end on July 31st, that gives me something to push forward to. And I can take those numbers that we track now and say, breaking down hours of, previous projects, this is how long we should need to get the project done.
Yeah.
So using that, it's really been great.
It's a specific, measurable, and achievable goal.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And that's kind of, I think over one of my shoulders here, there's a sign that says always improving. And it's kind of the interesting component that you guys are both talking about right now is the lessons that you've learned through managing projects and the changes and adjustments that you've had to make. Some of them have been be able to get better data, have better information, but both of you have implemented, and that's kind of where we were going there, is implemented kind of new processes or new ways to get your team better prepared to execute on the planning that you've already done. So you were just talking about it. You kind of put together a pre-project document that says this is the start date, the end date. These are the objectives. These are the measurables, and these are the variables that we know.
Yeah, I get pretty specific on mine. I break it down to the amount. If it's an electronics like access control system, for example, I break down exactly how many card readers we're going to have to install, to the point of which type of card reader.
Yep.
How many electric strikes or mag logs or whatever it is.
Sure.
I break that down because it helps me. It helped me when I was in the field of knowing, okay, I know about how long it takes me to do this. So it gives visibility for my guys to say, okay, we've got this. And then, like I said earlier, we have some guys that are good at some stuff and some guys that are better at other, hardware type things or whatever it is. It gives them the ability to, and I let them do this as far as, I don't let them, but to delegate those responsibilities throughout the team. I don't sit back here and micromanage and say, okay, you do this, and you do this. They work together as a team and they know each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses.
Sure.
And that's one of the things we've really grown into. And so being able to have that visibility, you can break down on, Derek, will you go do all the card readers? And, John, will you go do all the electric strikes or whatever it is? So I try to be, as visible as possible in a document, even though it's all in TrackVia and, we can pull it up on our phone and break it down.
Sure.
But this is a hard copy and something that you can, set on your cart, put in your van. You can look it over. You can plan the day before you get on site and say, okay, this is what we've got to do. And then you can check it off. It's a visual that's always in front of you because, I can take my phone and I can set it down and leave it wherever and turn it off. But that paper, as long as it's there in front of me, I can, look at it and see what it is.
Very cool.
That's something that I really think has helped us a lot on our side.
Mike, what have you implemented from changes from starting out a project?
Well, what I've done is I've made the project very visible to the technicians that are going to be going there. Mm-hmm. This last big project, I brought a guy that I brought in, and I labeled him as a project supervisor. So he basically knew everything about that project that I knew, mm-hmm. and we were able to work hand in hand with that. Throughout the project, which I think sped things up tremendously.
Sure.
was we were always thinking about the same thing. So if there's any issue on his end, he could contact me, and I knew exactly where he was, exactly what was going on. You know, and that project had about 4,000 different tasks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Literally, that's not an exaggeration. It was literally 4,000 tasks.
So the to print that off on a piece of paper would be printing a book.
Yeah.
So
We don't want to do that, especially color.
yeah.
You guys get angry.
Yeah.
We can do that.
That's a whole different podcast.
Chris isn't listening, is he?
Is our opening management system that we've developed has really helped in that.
Yeah.
Because I can be on the site virtually at all times. I had some medical issues throughout the project, and the project was in Charleston, South Carolina, which is 3 hours away. So for me to be able to virtually look at that project and see how it was going, and it really made a big difference. So when I got that call, I said, hey, what do you want to do about this? What do we need to do? How do we change this?
Yeah.
You know, it was very simple for me to say, okay, this is how we can fix it.
I think learning and really holding on to that prior planning component, which is part of that intentional execution core value, is getting people involved early, because we've all three of us have been in a technician role, and the worst thing that happens when you walk onto a job site for the first time and you're like, oh, what's going on here? And mentally, it takes you several hours, maybe even a full day, depending on the size and scope of the project, to actually wrap your head around, what am I supposed to be doing here? And everybody else has been working on it for months, and now I'm just here going, okay, I got to figure this out. So doing what you can to get people engaged and connected and knowledgeable about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so I think that's all the questions that I have, and I think you guys have provided a lot of interesting tactical information, especially in the second half of this conversation, that is going to be very beneficial for our customers, I believe, and for anybody that's watching or listening to this. One final question for both of you before we wrap up is, what is your favorite coffee? Because this is the Coffee Break podcast, and I realize we never talk about it.
I'm not a full-blown coffee snob yet, but I've been heavily peer pressured here at Loc-Doc to really advance my taste in coffee. Originally, back in the day, I was drinking the Keurig, and I believe I just got a notification that my AeroPress was delivered.
Oh, wow.
So
you should have answered the question earlier about peer pressure.
I guess I should have. But my favorite, I guess, bean or roast, you would call it, would be a medium roast. I've gone away from the dark side. I was a heavy dark roast drinker, and Chad's brought me over to the lighter side, I guess. And but I love good Ethiopian. I've tried a lot of different coffees. I've joined several different coffee subscriptions as far as getting bags delivered to my house, and my wife yells at me a lot. Sorry, honey. But
and you finally realized dark roast was not the way to go.
Dark roast is not the way to go. I enjoy the slightly lighter roast now, and it's something that I've really enjoyed, is trying all the different coffees, and I have you and Beeve to thank for that.
There you go, Mike. What's your favorite coffee?
Whatever I can get quickly.
Whatever's in front of you.
Mike's not a snob at all.
No, I'm not a snob at all. I enjoy the taste of coffee, but I don't usually like to take a lot of time to prepare a cup of coffee, and there's many methods out there, and I have a bunch of those methods at the house. Yeah. And I always revert back to whatever I can do quickly and just get on to what's next.
Whatever gets into my cup the fastest is my favorite cup. Very cool.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. If this information has been helpful to you, or you just really kind of like our theme song, can you help us out by rating us on whatever app you're using? And if you get really fancy, how about sharing a screenshot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? Okay, enough of all this. Let's get back to the conversation.
Hey, Mike, Andrew, thank you very much for spending time with us for the last, actually, 2 episodes. We spent a little extra time here than normal, but we felt like it was hopefully beneficial information for you and for our customers, for those that are listening and watching. So thank you very much for your time here. If you want more information about this, you can go to our website, Loc-Doc.net, and if you click under the services section, there's a project management entire section dedicated to it, talking a little bit about our process and how we handle things. So you can check that out as well. For those of you that are listening or watching for the first time, you can find out more about this podcast. We've gotten over 100 episodes now where you can go check out more information on business practices and strategies and things like this, but things about franchising your business or things about sales, how to build a sales team, how to structure your marketing, a lot of different things related to business practices and strategies. So go check that out. It's all available at locdoc.net/podcast. You can subscribe there. If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, you can find all of those available there. And this is also available in video form on YouTube and Facebook by searching LOC-DOC. So check all that out. And we look forward to seeing you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.